It's hard to imagine someone coming at night on a beautiful morning like today. But I am so intrigued by this story, by the way that Nicodemus comes to Jesus at night. Nicodemus is one of the member of the Sanhedrin, one of the 70 ruling families, the who's who of Israel, the ones who are really in charge of keeping the wheels turning in Jerusalem. It's an old family line. He's a big guy, and he's got a lot of responsibilities. So here he is coming to Jesus at night. Why? Why night? Now, maybe he's coming to Jesus at night because during the day he's got so much to do. This is all the time he's got left. You know what they say. With more power becomes more responsibility. A mentor of mine was fond of saying that everyone is more in the middle than it seems. So maybe at night, it's the time when he can just set all of that other stuff aside and come and have a conversation with his intriguing new rabbi. But I think there's another possibility about why Nicodemus might come at night. When I was still in graduate school, my favorite service during the week, although we had many, many church services in seminary, every morning we had morning prayer, we had evening prayer a couple of times a week. There was sung morning prayer, there was daily chapel, there was Eucharist, there was this, there was that. They were all really great. But the best service during the entire week was at 9 p.m. on Sunday, the Compline service at Christ Church, New Haven. Now, in the monastic order, there are several times a day that are set aside for prayer, and usually the monks and nuns will come into the church and sit in the choir, the stalls that are up close by the altar, and they will say or chant their prayers up there. But Compline is different. Compline is said in the dormitory as they stand at the entrances to their cells. It's the last prayer before bedtime. It happens at night, when things are dark and things are still. Compline in New Haven at Christ Church, you entered into this beautiful neo-Gothic building, and the only light came from candlelight illuminating the church. Lots of candles and nothing else. There's incense everywhere. So let's just say visibility is pretty low. Already your senses have been altered. What you smell, what you see. You sit down facing the altar, and from a little organ loft up on the left, you can hear a small ensemble singing a cappella music. There's nothing to do, there's nothing to say, there's nothing to sing. It's a sensory experience. It's like a little tiny pilgrimage of prayer that you go on. What I noticed about Compline is that all of these students, graduate students and undergraduates, would come, and during the day and during the week you'd see them, and you'd see them in classes and seminars, and they had the full armor of their intellect on. They had to posture and preen. They were worried about their appearance in terms of their grades, their academic accomplishments. How were they in the social strata of things? And at night they would come, and the armor would slip away, and they would enter fully into an immersive experience of prayer. It was not uncommon to see people who by day had faces that were completely masked in stoicism break open into tears. Compline is a very special time. That's what I think of when I think of Nicodemus coming at night to see Jesus. That maybe the full armor of being a member of one of the elite Sanhedrin can be set aside, and he can ask the questions that are really burning in his heart. And Jesus, being Jesus, especially the Jesus that we see from the fourth gospel, John's gospel, who has a way of saying really stuff, comes back with some really strange things. You can't be part of the kingdom of heaven, he says, unless you've been born from above. Now, most of the people in the fourth gospel are seem to be kind of like straight men for Jesus' esoteric, mystical kinds of sayings. Nicodemus says, what does that mean, born from above? That doesn't make any sense. And Jesus says, here's this whole mystery revealed. It's some pretty good stuff. He closes with what I think is one of the most important things that anyone says in the entire Bible, Old or New Testament, that God didn't enter into the world to condemn it, but to save it. God is to come to condemn us, but to save us, to bring us in, to draw us closer. This was on my mind this week when I was on retreat a couple weekends ago after Ash Wednesday. It was a retreat of women clergy. So if you ever want to see a room full of people that have some pretty full armor on, go to a retreat full of women's clergy. I never go to a retreat without my full armor, completely locked and engaged. I have a real attitude, you could say, a bad one, when it comes to going to retreats and conferences of any kind, conventions, I'm the guy that sits in the back and draws little sarcastic pictures and passes notes to my friends. I am the literal worst. So I go to a retreat and I'm completely expecting to roll my eyes, get through the event, check off the list of clergy requirements, and move on with my life. So no one was more surprised than me to discover that I actually really liked the retreat leader. Not only is she herself an Episcopal priest, great thinker, theologian, she also has her CCDL. She's a truck driver. She pulls the long haul. She does a refrigerated truck, what they call a reefer. I liked her already. A little piece of my armor maybe come off the shoulder pad. I'm suspicious and weary of things like this because when I grew up in the religious environment that I came up in, the churches where I went, it felt like any kind of emotional vulnerability was used against you. It was an opening for someone to manipulate you, right in the center of your heart. And as I got older, I thought, I'm not having any of that. I'm never going to be manipulated that way again. And I locked myself into a faith experience that started from the neck up. Didn't want to have any more exposure because I didn't want to be hurt that way anymore. I think that's happened to a lot of us. We've been hurt in a church experience where you open yourself up and find that it's just an entry for someone to wound you more. I wasn't having any of that. So then I go to this retreat, and the next thing she does is nothing. She just asks us to sit and be quiet for a few minutes and listen to some nice music. As a secret introvert, there's more points in her category because there's nothing I hate more than going in with my full armor and having to posture and pose a little more to have to say, well, here are all the amazing things that my church does, and here's how amazing I am, and, have to present all of that stuff, and just one more context. To be able to just sit and be quiet, that sounds like an actual honest-to-goodness retreat. So another little piece of my armor comes off. And then after a while, she invites us to a different kind of prayer. Now here, I'm going to tell you something. I am bad at prayer. I am not good at it. I worry a lot about saying the right words. I worry about am I doing this the right way? Am I fully opening myself up to God, or am I just ticking boxes, making sure that I'm going through the right list? Am I really focusing on the people and things I should be focusing on? I have a lot of neuroses about prayer. It makes it tough. I'm not good at it. And like most things I'm not instantly good at, I tend to try and put it off or reject it altogether. So our retreat leader, her name is Renee. Renee says, I want you to try something. I'm like, oh, this is going to be terrible. She says, I want you to close your eyes. I'm like, okay, well, at least no one can see me. If we're all gonna have our eyes closed, that's good. Close your eyes and imagine a place that you really love. It could be by a lake or a river, it could be outside. Maybe it's a room that you love. Maybe it's a room you've never seen, but you imagine would be good. She started talking, and it reminded me of this little book my mom gave me when I was a tiny girl, like 5 or 6, and the book was called In My Heart Room. And it was more or less the same thing. Imagine a special place inside of yourself that is only for you. No one else can go there. It's just for you. And as a little girl of 5 or 6, I thought, this sounds amazing. It's somewhere between like a fairy tale and a really good storybook, and it was all about me. How special. As a grown woman of 45, I thought, how corny is this? I don't know if I can do this. All right. I tried it. What's a place that I like? And without even trying, I imagined myself up in the park, up in Oronog Park, in a special place where I like to go and run with the dog. I'm like, oh, that's kind of nice. Just sitting here with my eyes closed thinking about it, it felt good. And she said, to really get into the details of it, and kind of did. And then she said, I want you to imagine that God comes to sit with you. I'm like, uh-oh, this is really going to be corny. I'm not sure I can do this. And she said, just imagine that God comes to be with you. That you stand up and you greet God. Maybe it's God in the person of Jesus. And the Jesus in my imagination was not like the Hans Holbein kind of white Northern European tall blonde Jesus. This Jesus was like short and Aramaic, and he wore work boots and dungarees, and he seemed like the kind of Jesus I could really relate to. And we greeted each other, and I thought, that feels good too. And she said, no, imagine that you sit down with Jesus next to each other. What's really nice about sitting side by side with someone is that all the pressure of having to look at someone in the face is taken away. I don't know if you've ever noticed that some of your best conversations with your favorite people might happen in the car. Or maybe it can happen when you're both sitting on the couch watching TV. That time when you're looking in the same direction, that time when you can reach over and say, wow, this thing is really bothering me. Or, I'm really sorry I hurt your feelings. Boy, I didn't mean to do that. You can reach over to your friend and say, I'm so glad we're together. You can, without looking at each other, say, I really care about you and I'm worried about you. It's kind of magic sitting side by side. And so in my imagination, kind of unbidden, without even meaning to, I saw myself sitting side by side with Jesus. And in this imagination, I was pouring out my heart. I was saying, you know, I'm worried about this coronavirus thing and what I'm going to do with my congregation. I was saying, I'm really sad about some of the people I love who are really sick right now, and I don't know what to do for them. I said, this thing that happened last week, it made me so angry, I'm not even sure what to do with my anger. I could say all the things I wanted to say. And I had the experience of someone just listening to me so deeply, with their whole presence, their whole being, all of their love. Do you know what that's like? Have you ever had that experience with someone who just listened to you with their whole self? How good that felt. How amazing it was to just be seen and perceived and understood. And then with our eyes closed, Renee says, now, wait quietly and see if Jesus gives you a word. So I did it. And I was astounded, like Nicodemus, at the word that I got. Now that word is a word for me alone. You might have a different word. And when she invited us to open our eyes, come back and be present to the room that we were in, I felt that all of my armor had been cast aside. And I looked around the room at my colleagues in ministry, women who have seen a lot. And I saw that their armor had been cast aside as well. It was such a gift. Every day since then, I have been doing that even a little bit. Going back to that place, making that space, making even just a few minutes. And I'm blown away by how it feels to make myself be present. How do you have to make it? It just is. So in the true spirit of learning something, I thought I would teach you about it, because if you really want to learn something, teach it to somebody else. And because you're sitting here, and it would be really weird and impolite to get up and leave while I'm standing here, we're going to try it together. Now, some of you will find this, as I found it, corny. For some of you, this is not your cup of tea, and that is totally fine. I ask, if you're not totally cool with this, that you just make a little space for those of us who want to try it out. What I'm going to ask you to do, all of us right now, is just get comfortable where you're sitting. I like to put my feet on the floor because it reminds me that the ground is holding me up and I don't have to do it myself all the time. And just close your eyes. And imagine that place that you love. It can be outside. Is it a lake? Is it a summer home? Is it inside? Is it a room you love? Just imagine all the details. What does it look like? What does it feel like? What does it sound like? What does it smell like? See yourself there. Let yourself be seated someplace comfortable. And now imagine that God is coming into this space with you. Maybe it's God in the form of Jesus. Maybe it's the Holy Spirit coming to be with you. Maybe it's the God who created you coming to be in that space with you. Maybe you sit facing each other, and maybe you just sit side by side. What is that like? How does that feel? You're fully present to each other. It's no effort, it just is. And maybe there's some things you want to tell God. Maybe the things that are on your heart the most, the things at the forefront of your mind, the stuff that you cannot shake. Or maybe you just want to sit quietly. Just feel the exquisite joy of full presence and love. And maybe God, the Spirit, maybe Jesus, gives you a word. Just notice how that feels, to receive a word from God. And now the time has come to say goodbye, but knowing that you can come back to this place at any time. Knowing that whenever you come to this place, God will come to be with you. That God is right there with you. Waiting. Hoping to be with you again. Say goodbye to each other with the promise that you'll be back soon. And when you're ready, feel yourself back in this room, back in this place. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. At any time, we can enter into that kind of sacred darkness by closing our eyes. into that special space where we can shed all of our armor and feel God's actual presence. At any time, we can make room and make quiet to hear what God has to say just for us. May it be true for you and for me, in the name of God.